Guillermo Portabales here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Our guest is Ann Louise Bardach, author of Without Fidel, A Death Foretold in Miami, Havana, and Washington. Juan?
Well, I'd like to shift the discussion from Miami to Havana, if we can, for a moment, because you spent obviously a lot of time in Cuba as well, and you had a chance at different points to interview Fidel Castro and some of the other leaders. How you see the situation now with Raul Castro in charge in Cuba? Will there be any significant, or what have been the significant changes so far? If you can give us a quick...
In terms of the actual government?
Right.
This transition has been seamless. It's been in the works for a long time. It's funny, when I interviewed Fidel Castro in, I guess, 93, 94, he said to me, and he was talking about his death and how it didn't make any difference, and he talked about whether a shark ate him. He said to me, don't think for a moment if something happens to me and I'm gone, because he liked to do deep sea fishing. He kept saying it's a possibility a shark could get him. And he says, don't think for a moment that this country will stop for a moment. He says the transition is established. It will be seamless. And we didn't use it, but I know at Vanity Fair, when I was working there at Vanity Fair for that interview, I thought, what is he talking about? And sharks eating him, he didn't care, his death, what was going to happen to him. He was absolutely right. Occasionally, Fidel Castro actually tells you the truth. Not often, but in this case, he was absolutely telling me the truth. It was seamless. He almost did die on July 27th, 2006. Anybody else would have died, and certainly I would have died. According to surgeons who worked on him, it's a miracle he's alive. He said he was going to die, and for a long time he was hovering between life and death, and much closer to death. He had a very serious surgery. He has what a lot of surgeons in this area call malignant diverticulitis. It's not cancer, but it actually can take you out faster than cancer. He had a history of diverticulitis. It's actually what killed his father. The abdomen and the guts in the Castro, that's the weak part of the Castro family, Raul too. And it got seriously infected, sepsis, he developed peritonitis. He wanted a certain surgery because he did not want to have a colostomy bag. He demanded that the surgeons do a resection, take out the whole colon and then put the pieces back. Very risky if you're 50 years old. And he gambled hard, and he lost, and God knows how long he was unconscious for. We haven't found that out. Needed multiple surgeries, had multiple cases of peritonitis. He will never be the same man. That said, I had some friends who saw him just last week. He's much thinner, but he's at home, living at his home in Punto Cero with his wife, or Dalia Soto del Valle. You know, he's doing a lot of the retired grandfather. He's a thin man. He uses a cane. He has never recovered from just the injuries from the fall in 2006. And he has good days and he has bad days. He's attached, he has the colostomy apparatus. He may also be needing dialysis very frequently. When you have such massive losses during surgery like that, you can have kidney failure. We don't know. But he is not the man he was, but that doesn't mean he won't be around. Remember Ariel Sharon? He's still with us.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for being with us, Ann Louise Bardach. Her book is just out now. It's called Without Fidel, A Death Foretold in Miami, Havana, and Washington. As we wrap up today's broadcast, well, commemorations are being held in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland today for the 150th anniversary of the abolitionist John Brown's raid on the arsenal at Harper's Ferry. We end today's show with a reading of John Brown's address to the court in Virginia that ordered his hanging. Actor Harris Yulin read his words as part of a larger reading of Howard Zinn's classic work, People's History of the United States. Yulin's followed by James Earl Jones reading Frederick Douglass. We begin with historian Howard Zinn.
John Brown, more than any other white American, devoted his life and finally sacrificed it on behalf of freedom for the slave. His plan, impossible and courageous, was to seize the arsenal at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, with a band of black and white abolitionists and set off a revolt of slaves throughout the South. The plan failed. Some of his men, including two of his own sons, were killed. John Brown was wounded, captured, sentenced to death by hanging by the state of Virginia, and with the enthusiastic approval of the government of the United States. When he was put to death, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "He will make the gallows holy as the cross." Here, John Brown addresses the court that ordered his hanging.
Had I interfered in the manner which I admit, had I so interfered in behalf of the rich, the powerful, the intelligent, the so-called great, or in behalf of any of their friends, or father, mother, brother, sister, wife, or children, or any of that class, and suffered and sacrificed what I have in this interference, it would have been all right. Every man in this court would have deemed it an act worthy of reward rather than of punishment. This court acknowledges too, as I suppose, the validity of the law of God. I see a book kissed, which I suppose to be the Bible, or at least the New Testament, which teaches me that all things whatsoever I would that men should do to me, I should do even so to them. I endeavor to act up to that instruction. I say I am yet too young to understand that God is any respecter of persons. I believe that to have interfered as I've done, as I've always freely admitted I have done, in behalf of his despised poor, I did not wrong, but right. Now, if it is deemed necessary that I should forfeit my life for the furtherance of the ends of justice, and mingle my blood further with the blood of my children and with the blood of millions in this slave country whose rights are disregarded by wicked, cruel, and unjust enactments, I submit. So let it be done.
Twenty 22 years later, in 1881, Frederick Douglass was asked to speak at a college in Harper's Ferry.
If John Brown did not end the war that ended slavery, he did at least begin the war that ended slavery. If we look over the dates, places, and men for which this honor is claimed, we shall find that not Carolina, but Virginia, not Fort Sumter, but Harper's Ferry and the Arsenal, not Colonel Anderson, but John Brown began the war that ended American slavery and made this a free republic. Until that blow was struck, the prospect of freedom was dim, shadowy, and uncertain. The irrepressible conflict was one of words, votes, and compromises. When John Brown stretched forth his arm, the sky was cleared.
James Earl Jones reading Frederick Douglass on this today, the 150th anniversary of abolitionist John Brown's raid on the Arsenal at Harper's Ferry. And that does it for our broadcast. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Shrufado Caduce, Aaron Mate, Angelique Comet, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Massoud, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Peter Curries, our engineers. Special thanks also to Becca Staley, Nick Gilla, Hugh Grant, Samantha Chambly, Jessel Noor, John Gerberg, John Randolph, Kellen Innocent, Kieran Krug Meadows, Rakan Penny, Vesta Godars, Rabia Al-Khani. Our website is democracynow.org. You can get our transcripts, video, and audio podcasts there. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Democracy Now!